NewsNation contributor Mick Mulvaney joining us now, off to a very, very busy start. Almost as soon as the swearing in was over, the work began. Thank you, as always. What do you make, first of all, your thoughts on these pardons?
I was hoping he wouldn't do it as broadly as he did. I understand he hasn't pardoned everybody. There's still a half dozen or a dozen so folks that he hasn't pardoned. I took J.D. Vance at his word when he said none of the violent offenders would be pardoned. So I'd be curious to see where we stand on that commitment. I don't like the idea of sort of trying to shove January 6th under the rug. That being said, it looks like it's a much more legitimate use of the pardon authority than what Joe Biden did. At least Donald Trump has pardoned people who were actually charged and convicted of a crime. We all seem to know that that's an appropriate use of the pardon power, whereas what Biden did yesterday was just bizarre, to pardon people who not only don't claim they haven't done anything wrong, or are talking about not accepting the pardons. I think Liz Cheney's talking about not accepting hers. And the one for Anthony Fauci is the one I don't understand. Marni goes all the way back to January 1st of 2014. Keep in mind, we don't really know who Tony Fauci was until January, February of 2020. So I'm not sure what that's all about. Look, the two things put together, this is the takeaway for me. I think there's going to be a long and necessary conversation in Washington, D.C. about whether or not it's time to try and restrict presidential authority regarding pardons. It may be something right now that has bipartisan support.
We're waiting on the swearing in of Marco Rubio as Secretary of State, Mick. So when that happens this morning, I will be bringing that to our audience live. But the other major issue that Trump is bringing into the fold is big changes for infrastructure, somewhere around $1 trillion for an infrastructure package in his first term. What do you anticipate with something so large trickling down to our American cities?
A couple of things. He's going to have to focus on energy as part of his pledge to bring down inflation. Inflation is caused by a couple things. One of the big things is government spending. Congress controls that. I'm not sure spending is going to come down very dramatically, even though the Republicans are in charge. So Trump is going to have to go someplace else. Deregulation tends to lower inflation, and cheaper energy tends to lower inflation. So my guess is this infrastructure announcement today will have something to do with energy. Keep in mind, one of the lesser covered executive orders that he issued yesterday deals with declaring a national emergency for energy. By making this declaration, it frees up some ability he has to move money around, to streamline permitting, et cetera. So my guess is this infrastructure will be heavy on energy because that can go straight to prices that Americans pay. Donald Trump wanted to do a lot on making it easier to build roads, bridges, pipelines in the first term. We didn't have time to finish that. My guess is he'll pick up here on day two exactly where he left in Trump 1.0.
The idea of Gulf of America, just one of the executive orders or things to come potentially in this administration. Anything surprise you about what he's already began to work on?
I kind of like the Gulf of America thing, to be honest with you. But we were doing another show on NewsNation last week when this came up, and I actually wanted to do some research. So I looked at, there's a couple of Europeans who are credited with the European discovery of the Gulf of Mexico. Obviously, it was there forever, but they discovered it. One of them is Amerigo Vespucci, the same guy that the Americas are named after. So it doesn't seem to be outrageous to call it the Gulf of America. Look, it's not the most outrageous thing that Donald Trump is going to do for the next 4 years, and I don't have any difficulty with it. I wasn't really surprised. I was surprised by the number. Keep in mind, during his first 4 years, Donald Trump only introduced 225 executive orders, and he got close to that yesterday. If he didn't get past it, I've lost track of exactly where we are. But some of us were expecting between 90 and 100, maybe 100, and went over 200 yesterday. So the sheer number of them surprised me. It's going to take a long time to digest them. And maybe what surprised me the most, Marni, was that there wasn't a lot in there yesterday on tariffs. He talked about them. He talked about a 25% tariff on Canada and Mexico, talked about a tariff generally as part of a discussion with China, but didn't really, I can't find any executive orders yet that speak specifically to tariffs. So my guess is there's a lot more of those coming.
Yeah, I think resupplying the ink at the White House, at least in the first 100 days, potentially. Mick, thanks as always. Good to see you. Thank you for watching. Go to newsnationnow.com to find NewsNation on your television provider. And don't forget to click the red subscribe button below to get more of NewsNation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.